You were listening to episode 182 of Mitolife Radio. I'm Matt Blackburn, and today I'm interviewing Andra Sitoianu on organotherapy, heavy metal toxicity, specifically aluminum, and allergies. She shares her journey of having juvenile arthritis, ovarian cysts, and a son that couldn't tolerate her breast milk. So this is an episode I recommend having your notepad ready because there's quite a lot of information that she shares and a lot of practical tips too. She talks about why she doesn't like raw liver, the effect that soaking liver in milk has on the copper status of the liver. And I ask her questions that you guys sent in, including the best ways to get heavy metals out of the body, her thoughts on saunas for detoxing metals, oxalates, eye floaters, ozone, how to detox barium, collagen supplements, Alpha Lipoic Acid, detoxing from the jab, alkaline water, dandruff, homeopathy, and a lot more. This episode's jam-packed with fascinating information. So enjoy the show. Here is Andra Sitoianu. All right, we're here with Andra Sitoianu. I almost had it. Sitoianu, welcome to the show.
Thank you. The pleasure's all mine. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, this will be cool. I love your posts that you put up. It's I really respect that you don't do, dancing reels and lip syncing. You just have really informative posts. And you focus in on organotherapy, which is organ meats, right, for health, and heavy metal toxicity and food allergies. And does a lot of this stem from what you've experienced with your son with when he had severe eczema?
Yeah, exactly. It all started with my son. The pieces of the puzzle actually started with my son, but it started a long time before that, I believe. We always look at things that happen in the first 60, 90 days of the issue, but I truly believe it can even stem like decades and decades beforehand. And for me, it was probably also from something in my childhood. I was born in Romania. So at the age of 7, I immigrated here. But prior to the age of 7, I had a very Eastern European, almost, communistic lifestyle upbringing. We didn't have much, but we did have a little farm. So we were able to have our own chickens. We had our own pigs. We even made our own fermented foods. We were doing our own wine and spirits, which we still do in our garage in Canada, but that's another story. But yeah, so we had a really good upbringing when it comes to food and nutrition. It was always seasonally done. We ate a lot of animal-based protein, a lot of dairy, not a lot of fruits and vegetables, which is really funny because right now, the Dr. Pete diet, the pro-metabolic is all about that. But ironically, it's such a Balkan diet. And most Balkans were probably can attest to that. We're all about, lots of dairy, lots of animal protein, and maybe some tomatoes and some peppers in there, and lots of fruit. But so we had a good upbringing in terms of that. But I did have a lot of health issues as a young person myself. I had juvenile arthritis, which nobody knew where it came from at the age of 4. My legs were shaking. I was always shaking, especially when I was running or when I was doing any extra kind of effort activities. Then that got kind of taken away by Western medicine and some injections, probably some steroid injections, which probably didn't help either. And then I had also some tonsillitis, so my tonsils were removed. I had some adenoids as well, and those were removed at the age of 4 and 5. I'm not going to spare you the details of how they were removed, but there was rope involved, and let's just put it that way. Wow. So there was some interesting kind of times in my life. One portion of it was very healthy, very seasonal, always outside. And then the other portion was a lot of some health issues that now thinking about it probably had to do with some environmental aggressors that I probably faced in my life. And then that kind of carried on through my teenager years in hormonal imbalancement. So we came to Canada when I was 7. We discovered the Western, way of eating. We had the purple ketchup, the all colorful ice creams, the blue Pepsi, you name it. We thought it was as innocent as the food of Romania. Somebody was making it by hand in a beautiful factory, right? So we ate a very Western society staple diet. And I definitely kind of got hurt by that as well, for sure, from a hormonal imbalancements. My PMS symptoms at the age of 14 were very debilitating. I was fainting, I was vomiting, couldn't go to work. And that's when the birth control pill kind of came in, unfortunately, as well. So it was 10 years on the birth control pill. And the interesting part about the birth control pill in Canada, the difference with the States, from what I understand, is that there is iron in some of these pills. Usually the placebo for you guys in the United States, the placebo pills are iron filled, but us in Canada, every single one of them has iron in it. So I believe an intake there was really, really increased. And I did show some symptoms as well. I didn't know at the time. Now looking back, I kind of put the puzzle together. So I was on the birth control pill for a long time. Then came time when I was around mid-20s to have kids. I was looking forward. I stopped the birth control pill. And thankfully, but at the same time, I wish I didn't. I got pregnant right away. So I never had a chance to kind of detoxify my body or put it back into homeostasis after the pill. And I do believe that kind of impacted my son. So that's what I'm saying when, we think things happen 2 weeks, 3 weeks prior to that health decline. But I truly, truly believe it starts with the mother. And this is why I'm so, so bullish with my clients or anyone that wants to listen to me on social media. That's what kind of started this profile, to make sure that you take the time to understand where you are with your terrain, what are some environmental aggressors that you kind of faced, and how you can go about to kind of just create more vitality and balance back in your body. So I'm there to assist for anything like that, through social media or whatever, consultations or DMs. So that happened. My son had swollen kidneys while he was inside me. I had ovarian cysts. One of them was the size of a grapefruit. It was not the easiest pregnancies. And then my son, when he came out, they had to put him on antibiotics because he had a kidney infection as well. So that probably destroyed his gut. He had cradle cap, very extreme cradle cap as well for the first 2-3 months of his life. They said it was normal. 70% worldwide of kids do have cradle cap, which is a candida overload that takes over the head. It comes in this form of very, very thick crust of yeast. It can overtake the eyebrows as well, the tongue, and it's called thrush. They just said it was normal to comb it out, right? The topical kind of requirements to remove the candida. I obviously did all of that. It didn't work out. By the age of 3 months, he already had some issues with the gut, right? Because of the antibiotics, the cradle cap was there. And then at the age of 4 months, that's when his health really, really declined. And just randomly could not tolerate my breast milk anymore. He was severely infected with eczema from one day to the other, pus coming out of his cheeks, bleeding from every single part of his body. We had to put gloves on him at every point of his day and night. So that was a really hard time in his life, my life. It was a bit stressful. But that's when I started putting the puzzle together. I didn't understand what was going on. We didn't have any allergies, eczema, nothing like that in my family and in his dad's family as well. So that's when I started digging a little bit further, and I started seeing that, environmental toxins or just mineral deficiencies from the mother also, not just from, the nutritional aspect or the environment, being around fragrance or being around mold or whatever it is that the child might come into contact with, but also the mother. I know you talk a lot about the vitamin A part of it yourself. I talk more about the toxicity part of it, that I think I have passed on to him, unfortunately. So then 100 food allergies later, that were diagnosed through blood work. He couldn't even touch anything that was not wood. So no plastic fork, no silicone tray, no chair, no carpet, no nothing. Everything would make him hive and really feel, in a bad place. And now, thank God, it took 1.5 years of me applying some of the iron overload naturopathic principles, applying some of the organotherapy principles as well. And now he's gone from 100 to almost only 6 allergies. Some of the biggest ones, nuts, seeds, or nuts and peanuts are still there. Fish, unfortunately, as well, is still there. And then dairy, which is the hardest one I find, emotionally and physically. The bovine protein, he's anaphylactic to any dairy product still at this point. But we're working on it. And I know at one point I will be able to hopefully get him back to a good place. So that's the part, that's where we got, that's how we got here today. It is also in a way, a silver lining, because I would never be here if it wasn't for him and what he went through. So that silver lining I'm trying to compensate the guilt in a way for what he went through as well. So hopefully I can get to a place where he's back to being normal and thriving.
Wow, that's an incredible journey.
Yeah, it's a lot of details. I know, I really want to speak.
No, it's great. I'm curious. So it sounds like you had a pretty clean lifestyle when you were in Romania.
Yes.
But do you think a lot of most of the exposure happened when you came to Canada and you got exposed to environmental toxins there?
I do. We ate a lot more gluten than we used to back in Romania. We probably also had a lot of more, the birth control pill didn't help from a tender age of 12 to 14. I don't remember exactly at what point, but I was very early on as well. That is a metal as well. Iron is a metal that we need to take into account, not just, the normal, the ones that we hear about, like the lead, the cadmium, the mercuries. So yeah, 100% it came from, a bigger portion of it came from the Western way, because this is where I got more sick than ever before. So, and it accumulates right in the body. And if you don't, there is a naturopathic kind of quote. Unfortunately, it's not an easy one, but one of the ways to detox is having a child. We say that often. And we see a lot of people being like, oh, I just got my eyesight back after being pregnant. It's like, yeah, it's the heavy metals that perhaps accumulated in your eyes that you maybe have passed them along. And there is research that shows, Italian research that shows that the placenta has about 98% of the same metals that you have in your body. The placenta does accumulate about 80 to 98% of them inside the placenta. But the umbilical cord actually keeps about 50% in. So there's a defense mechanism there applied. And then another 50% does go to the baby. So there is research that shows that heavy metal is transported from the placenta through the umbilical cord to the baby.
That's incredible. You made me think about that supplement deer placenta, which I think is popular in TCM.
Yeah.
I wonder if that's commonly contaminated with heavy metals. I guess it would depend on whether the deer are wild or farm raised, and lots of factors there.
Right. And probably also where it comes from. A lot of, unfortunately, the Asian countries, when it comes to aluminum or mercury or even lead, cadmium is more Latin America, but they do have more accumulation because of the industrialization processes over there. It leaks a lot of the water system. So the wilder, the better. Probably a deer is more wild in that case. So if it comes from a wild sense, like ox also is a little bit better than beef in most supplements as well, because they come from a wilder environment, then yes, that should be better. But yes, placenta is also used in organotherapy to promote, again, that healing an organ with an organ by providing the blood flow and all the minerals needed to accommodate life through a strong placenta. Yeah.
Wow, that's incredible. Yeah, when I moved here to this off-grid property last year, there's elk and moose and deer that come every day that I see from my windows. And I remember last year I saw this giant bull moose shedding his velvet off his antlers.
Oh, wow. Wow. Did you get it?
My goal is this year I will, because it's right in front of my house. And so I figure I can go out there, harvest it, mortar and pestle it, do whatever, encapsulate it if I want. Be fun.
That would be amazing. We all know the great properties of deer velvet, right? So you have it right there for you. I would totally run. Yeah, it's probably a good idea for sure.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. So 100 allergies down to 6. That's incredible. Have you tried, like you mentioned, bovine protein? Have you tried goat products and sheep and different things?
I did. Even if I intake it, if I eat some cheese and I just kiss him on the cheek, he will hive. So he's very, very sensitive to any of these these proteins. Unfortunately, he's definitely making some progress. It's worse than before. I can kiss him and now he hives less, so it's an indication for me that perhaps his inflammatory markers are lowering down. But again, we did work. The kidneys were really the focus here for me. I was trying to understand why his kidneys were swelling so much. And we look at the gut a lot for food allergies. We say heal the gut, heal the gut. But the gut itself, the leaky gut aspect of the gut is an interesting take, because the lining of the gut takes 3 to 4 days to regenerate itself. So at the end of the day, if you are working on a leaky gut, but it still keeps on opening up, then is the problem the gut, or is the problem an environmental aggressor, something that's happening in there that's probably impacting the fact that the joints are continuing on opening even if the cells are regenerating? So I kind of left the gut a little bit alone and I focused on some of the other organs. I did work with some naturopaths here in Montreal, and their focus was more on the liver, my focus was more on the kidneys, and I definitely think that I brought a little bit more benefit to this, because the kidneys are also the ones where heavy metals are most of the time accumulating and also filtrating through it. Something like aluminum, which is the most abundant metal in the world. And, that was my focus there, because I thought, the aluminum that I probably ingested throughout my life, throughout my water intake, medication, anything like that, has probably passed along. And we have research that shows it goes to the placenta and the umbilical cord. And swelling of the kidneys is a side effect of aluminum toxicity. So I kind of got into aluminum toxicity from that perspective, and again, the kidneys, because of the swelling, it kind of told me there was something happening over there with some heavy metals. When we look at aluminum in general, it also has a lot of different applications on iron metabolism as well. So I know that, somebody that has food allergies or eczema in general do have also tendencies to be anemic. And we don't understand why most of the time, because they are people. Most kids do eat a protein-rich diet most of the time. They do enjoy having meat. So the anemia from an iron perspective is probably not what's happening. What I'm thinking right now, I'm thinking more it's from an iron metabolism where aluminum gets in the way. And how does it get in the way is through limiting the transportation. It's really blocking the way for the aluminum to get into the transferrin port. It has shown clinically to be blocking that pathway. So the fact that you were blocking the pathway for it to get to the oxygenated state, probably that aluminum, again, it stays stuck somewhere, right? It's just not going anywhere. And it's not going anywhere, I'm thinking, from a mineral deficiency perspective. I think it's not going anywhere, and it's kind of not recycling, because it has these environmental aggressors in them, like aluminum has shown to be impacting iron metabolism. So that was another perspective of it as well. From the eczema perspective, we know that eczema is a very hard one to heal. No naturopath is going to tell you it's going to take 2 weeks, 3 weeks. It's an onion that needs to be peeled. And one of the onions that I found that has helped tremendously and nobody thinks about is a protein that's called filigree. I don't know if you've ever heard of the filigree protein from a skin perspective. So the filigree protein is a protein that the allopathic medical industry says that we don't know how it's been altered. I don't know either, because there's no really research about it, but we know in 10% of the humans, especially European descent, it's been altered through genes, but I believe it has some environmental impact as well. Filigree is a protein that binds keratin fibers together, so the skin. When the filigree protein is altered, that's when the skin starts erupting. When the skin starts erupting into a mode of atopic dermatitis, that's where the allergens can come in from different places and orally and get into the bloodstream where, the body sees it as an attack. So the filigree production is made by an amino acid that's called L-histidine. L-histidine is an antagonist to histamine. So it all, again, relates to kidney health right there. We've seen research that if you supplement or just have foods that are rich in L-histidine and you have atopic dermatitis, you have a 40% increased chance of healing and getting over the atopic dermatitis symptoms. So that's what I did. I worked on histamine release. I worked on bringing the antagonist to histamine by providing L-histidine. And this is where organotherapy really helped me, because I was able to get desiccated kidneys into his supplement, into his nutrition. I did use desiccated because at that time I wasn't able to find any kidneys here in Canada. Montreal is not somewhere where organs are very popular. But desiccated I was able to get desiccated. And so that was able to add that to every single food he was having. It was oatmeal or fruit puree. He was having kidneys abundantly every single day for that L-histamine. L-histamine is also found in desiccated liver again. So if you're having some liver, you're also getting some of those properties from amino acids. And I think, we often think about liver and desiccated organs from a mineral base. We tend to forget about the amino acid profile that is super, super important with organs, especially, and from an animal-based protein diet that most tend to not really look at, but they're making a very, very big impact on our immunity and our trying to balance dysbiosis. So that's what happened here. I linked the eczema to a protein called filaggrin that was lacking by a deficiency in L-histidine. L-histidine, when it's deficient because of heavy metals, research shows it creates histamine. Histamine is the immune response to food allergies. So by making sure that he has the proper L-histidine in his body, his histamine started to reduce. And the fact that also there's the DAO enzyme in desiccated kidneys, I was able to kind of kill two birds with one stone there and provide some strong foundational for his kidneys. We've done some also ultrasounds. His kidneys are starting to close very nicely. So I know that once, we're working on closing his kidneys, perhaps the food allergies are also going to be, with time, stopping to appear.
That's incredible. That's really cool. I want to research the filaggrin protein now.
I'll send you. I have all the links. It's really cool. There's not a lot that you can feed it, but you can feed it L-histidine. It's the only thing that I have found. That and collagen. Collagen is a really good one as well. So both are found in animal-based proteins. So keep on eating head to toe, and you'll be good from an eczema perspective. If you have those issues, I would highly recommend looking into L-histidine and filaggrin protein.
That's incredible. Yeah, I was raised with eczema, and I had eczema before I had acne, and maybe they fed into each other, but usually on my inner arms. And my mom, we had aloe vera in our backyard in California, and so she would cut off a leaf and then we'd fillet it, and then she would just rub on the aloe vera and it would soothe it so well. But we never got to the root of it, and I was technically kind of vegetarian vegan for most of my life.
Oh, wow.
For the first 2 decades. And so I would imagine I was getting almost zero histidine.
Probably, yeah, for sure. And, when you're looking at the meridians, the TCM meridians, the inner arm, and especially like the back of the legs, all those are linked to kidneys, the kidney meridian. So that's how also I got kind of to the bottom of, he was having a lot of back of the hands and underneath eczema patches that would just not go away. And that's how I also was able to kind of put the puzzle together with TCM's meridians of acupuncture to understand which organ needs help. And that one is, those meridians are kidney meridians.
That's fascinating. Wow.
I really every single thing I could find.
It sounds like it. Yeah, all the bases covered.
Right.
Yeah, the DAO enzyme too. I've had Morley on 12 times, and he always talks about that diamine oxidase and how it's copper dependent. And then I had Jason Hommel on my show a few times, and he's been doing a lot of zinc research, and I think a little bit in vitamin C. And I kind of delved into it, and I guess that enzyme that deactivates histamine, it's not only copper dependent, but zinc and vitamin C dependent as well. Right. So there's those three, and I'd imagine all three of those are in kidneys probably, right?
Right, and all three of those are immune protectors, right? They help with redox, they help build immunity as well, and also they work synergistically. Aluminum impacts the metabolism of all those ones. Magnesium, vitamin C, and zinc are impacted by aluminum toxicity as well. So if you're having aluminum kind of stuck inside your body without being properly excreted through urination, you will have some impact on your zinc levels, on your iron, your vitamin C levels.
Wow. Yeah. So what are some aluminum sources? Because I often think, when I got into health 12 years ago or whatever, and I started researching heavy metal toxicity, I was thinking about all the sodas I drank growing up. And,
Yeah.
it's really like the phosphoric acid with the aluminum can. I would
Right.
imagine that's going to cause some leaching, right?
Yeah, 100%. Most of them come from exactly aluminum foil, aluminum cookware, ceramics, a lot of cosmetics, a lot of cosmetics for women in general. A lot of cosmetics have a lot of heavy metals in them, especially lead and aluminum. Of course, dental fillings, deodorants. So back in the day, we all used to wear kind of those aluminum salt deodorants, and medication as well. Medication is another one.
Wow. Yeah, it seems like in medication they put everything, right? You get fluoride, you get iron a lot of the time, you get aluminum.
Yeah, with medication, you really need to read the inserts. Let's just put it that way. A lot of times, especially I've been writing a lot about fluoride these days. Halogens have a really huge impact on thyroid health, on iodine deficiencies as well. So I've been kind of researching that. Zinc and copper are also super impacted by fluoride and halogens. And yeah, 100%. There's a lot of fluoride in antidepressants, antacids, a lot of medication.
Mm. Yeah, I think often people wonder how they're so deficient in everything. I mean, that's generally what I tell people when they it's not they're just deficient in a few things. They're probably deficient in both copper and zinc, right? Not just copper. And a lot of these deficiencies come from like an excess of, like you're talking about, aluminum and other heavy metals, right? Because it displaces the minerals.
So yes, we do talk a lot about soil, but I do believe, there's a second layer to this. I agree that the soil, the copper has no more, the soil has no more copper. But the zinc, we are abundant around us of zinc, but why is it non-metabolizing and synthesizing well? This is where we need to be focusing more on. A little bit like vitamin D as well. Aluminum actually impacts parathyroid and vitamin D conversion. Aluminum, cadmium, all interfere with active D called resveratrol. So if you have a aluminum toxicity, you'll have a harder time making vitamin D.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah, because I know magnesium's required to convert. There's probably more cofactors, I'd imagine, to convert, like D3 to 25D to 125D. But I didn't know that aluminum impacts that. That's interesting.
Yep. It's in the parathyroid. It completely impacts the synthesizers of parathyroid PTH conversion. So that once you have that, your calcium levels go up, your vitamin D goes down probably, and you're having a harder time making active D. There's actually a lot of things you can do for active D to make it in a better place with naturalistic, and one of them is looking into your heavy metal load.
Yeah, it's such a complicated one. Like I've had Jim Stevenson Jr. on, I think 3 times, and he's just so smart. He's been looking into this for years, and like just getting my mind, or people's mind around that you can have too high of active D, and that's indicative of an infection. But there's probably so much nuance that goes into that too.
Yeah, that's one that I'm trying to research and wrap my head around it, but I'm still researching it. What I've researched though is how they make synthetic D, and it's very interesting. Where most of it comes from lanolin, we all know that. But how do the sheep make vitamin D if the sun is not even hitting their skin, right? And it all has to do with their hair. What they do is they actually lick with the tongue. They lick their hair, which that secretes like a fat. They have a special fat on their tongue, which secretes a precursor to vitamin D on their hair, on their sheep's wool. And then when the sun actually hits that precursor, it transforms into vitamin D. Then they lick it back, and that's how they get vitamin D inside their body. It's a whole ecological system, and it actually works a very similar way for us as well. We have a sebum, like we have a little oil coat on our body that is the precursor to cholesterol and to vitamin D, to active vitamin D. And research has shown that if you wash even with water, you can remove that vitamin D precursor from your body. So you're having a harder time synthesizing if you are somebody that is too clean in a way, because you have none of the oil that is needed for sunlight to make vitamin D.
Wow, interesting. So I wonder if you're gonna sunbathe on your porch or your backyard, maybe it's better if you shower first and then go out there
Correct.
Probably.
Exactly. It takes up to 3 days for your vitamin D to start synthesizing inside your epidermis. So that also kind of tells me how come, what is the impact of synthetic D? How does the body kind of absorb it, and what rate? If the normal rate by the sun, it takes 3 days for us to produce it. Then, the synthetic, how long does it take? I know to make vitamin D takes about 20 minutes, I believe, in UVB ray lights. I think the green shades of the UVB that they use to make synthetic D out of it. So it seems like the synthetic D, they're doing it at a very fast pace, and our body is doing it at such a slow pace, almost 72 hours it takes to fully synthesize into active D. So that also, I'm kind of looking into it to see what is the difference here between the ways that are produced normally by our body and the way that synthetic vitamin D is done, and how can it impact the accumulation of calcium in our body, or just get to that active state in our body.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, I got heat for the Rosita cod liver oil containing vitamin D, because they're saying I'm promoting vitamin D now. It's kind of funny because it's a food source, right? It's balanced.
Right. I saw that. Yes, I am aware. I think that there's a big miscommunication, because I've never heard you guys ever say that you're not promoting whole food vitamin D. Then you would stop promoting mushrooms, stop promoting like olive oil and all those, fat soluble like milk. So I'm not sure where the miscommunication went there. I think we're all agreeing that whole food vitamin D is good to go. It was more probably the synthetic one that most people have, an approach to it, and no, we're still debating that one, right?
Right.
But towards the eczema and the aluminum, the fact that any skin issues that you have, that is acne or psoriasis or eczema, vitamin D is impacted by that, right? We know that the levels of vitamin D inside your body will impact the skin health. So the fact that the heavy metals do kind of impact the parathyroid that produces active D, then what does that say also about, the fact that your skin is probably open from the fact that the aluminum also is taking over that conversion? So it's pretty multidimensional when it comes to heavy metals. You can really kind of look at it from every single organ, every single hormone, every single layer of your body, and probably make improvements by just helping the elimination.
Yeah, I think about Accutane too. I was never on that for acne, but that synthetic A that's prescribed for, for that skin condition, and how A and D are joined to the hip, which is interesting. So
yeah. Vitamin D interferes with metabolism of retinol. I do have some research on that. So if you're taking synthetic D, you will be having a hard time metabolizing retinol.
Mm-hmm. With aluminum, I wanted to ask you, have you looked into the silica connection? Because I've been taking like liquid silica off and on for years, and that seems to be almost identical to aluminum, right? To where aluminum will displace silica, and silica can...
They work synergistically. Yeah, they do replace each other, and they do have very similar properties. They work very, very similarly, a little bit like aluminum can replace iron inside the iron metabolism as well. So yeah, but I did give my son silica, and it did help. Silica is a natural compound. It's, I know Fiji water is very promoted because of silica inside of it, and some communities have seen benefits from drinking. The plastic bottle might be another deal with that. Maybe if it came in glass, it would be a more interesting perspective. But silica has helped, and we do have, again, the research and the articles behind it to say that it is a aluminum chelator somewhere.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's a good one I like, Living Silica Orgono. I think I've seen them at the health conferences over the years, and I think it was discovered in Spain, and the guy got like blasted by the medical mafia because he was helping a lot of diseases with it, and they didn't like that. It was like a very specific liquid form.
Oh, I didn't know that. Okay, that's interesting. Very cool. Yeah, I can understand why when you're disrupting a bit environment, you get a little backlash, but it's helped a lot. Most of the chelators for aluminum are very hard on the body, and most of them, the ones that are used by the medical society, is the same ones as the ones chelating metal, and we know that those come with some big side effects. So silica is a more gentle one on the body to excrete it. There's also chlorella, coriander also has impact on heavy metals in general, aluminum as well. So yeah, there's a bunch of plants that you can work with, or even homeopathic remedies that have silica inside of them that could potentially help as well.
Mm. So I know on your website you offer a hair tissue mineral analysis test, and
I
I've
do.
heard mixed things about that. Like some people said it's only good to see if you're a slow or a fast oxidizer, and then some people say it's absolutely worthless, and then a lot of people I've had on the podcast, I think mostly women, offer it, and they've said it's been proven to be effective with their clients when they get them on a supplement protocol and they see their levels change as expected on the HTMA. So just curious your general thoughts on it and your experience with it.
My experience with it from a personal perspective, that was pretty accurate. But again, you have to take that metabolism in fact. You have to see if you're a fast oxidizer or a slow oxidizer in order to understand. And I don't think you can use just that personally. You really need to look into the nutritional perspective of it, the lifestyle perspective of it, what has been some of the health issues, some family history behind it. I don't think just by itself HTMAs are enough. And also sometimes you do need to retest multiple times to understand, because if no heavy metal shows, that doesn't mean you don't have any heavy metals inside of you, right? It just means that perhaps you're just not, your detox pathways are not open, or you're somebody that doesn't metabolize them well, or you haven't done anything to kind of move them along. So you need to retest after a couple of supplementation to understand, if they are coming out in a way, if your detox pathways are open, and if that supplementation is targeted. But I did see to help, especially with my son. He did show some heavy metal toxicity on it. The ones that I was already kind of thinking about, one of them would be aluminum. So for a personal perspective, I am biased because it did work for me in a way. What are your thoughts on it?
I still want to do one. I'm surprised that I haven't. I haven't done a lot of tests. I'm slowly going to get back into it. I've only done like 2 full Monty iron panels, and I think years ago I did like an inside tracker. It was like a 30 marker test, and I'm curious where my testosterone's at right now, because back then it was like, I think it was like 4 years ago, it was like almost 1,300, which is pretty good.
Yeah.
But I think I was taking a lot of elk antler and
yeah, for sure. The more data we have, the better. We do have a little bit of red tape in Canada, actually, when it comes to data, and especially markers like serum markers, blood markers. We don't have access to something like a full Monty panel for us. It's not easy to have access to something of that kind of detail, unfortunately. So the more we can get, the better. And HTMA is something that has helped me because of the red tape on other kind of functional tests that we're not really able to get our customers on. We work with what we have, and most of the time it's working out well for us, and we do have a lot of positive outcome.
Yeah, that's so wild. Have you heard Morley talk about like the active ceruloplasmin assay? And he says you can't get that in most countries. You have to go to Spain.
Or I don't know what countries they are, but next time I'll be in that country, I would love to know my levels for sure. Yeah, I'm pretty sure Canada, you can't. Just getting vitamin D in Canada is almost impossible. It's very, wow. Yeah. Like my doctor has to tell, has to put on the lab that I have chronic diarrhea for me to get vitamin D on my levels. Like, yeah, they're not very open to markers, especially if you're a healthy 30-year-old. It's very limited, unfortunately.
Wow, that's pretty sad.
Yeah. So we work with some labs in the States and in Europe that are open to having clients internationally, and doesn't give us a lot of red tape. So that's good. We were able to find hacks and different laboratories where we can get some data going. And most people do like to see data, let's be honest here, especially when it comes to a natural, from such an allopathic Western, mentality. Sometimes data does provide a sort of relief or, a little understanding, even if it's not 100% accurate, like food sensitivity tests, they have a 60% false positive rate. But, the fact that sometimes they see something like that, they kind of gives them a good kind of confidence of what it could potentially happen in the long run if we go along with supporting this type of data. So most people are very open these days. It's nice.
That's a good point. Yeah. I wanted to ask you, Andra, what are your thoughts on whole food, like actual organs versus the desiccated supplements? Then I guess if there's a nuance between like raw and cooked, some people prefer raw liver, some people prefer cooked liver.
Yeah, I'm not a big fan of raw liver for me. I just I, I I don't find blood in general for me needs to be removed from an organ in order to be as clean as possible. Blood is usually where we find a lot of some of the impurities. So for me, eating raw blood is not something that I approach or recommend. So just lightly actually searing it for me, it's doing enough. I don't think that that bioavailability that's getting lost in the heat. Are we really going to count blueberries here like we're bodybuilders? You know what I mean? I don't know if the gain is a good one. And at the same time, if you're somebody that soaks your liver into milk, where in a way you're chelating your copper, which is very ironic because lactoferrin is a copper chelator. So if you're soaking in a milk, you're kind of also removing some of that micronutrients. So a lot of people I know they're shooting it with milk, which I find a little ironic. But then they'll blast desiccated, which at the end we're all kind of even. We just have to choose the best way for us. But it is true that there is a manipulation of oxidation when you are using, let's say, desiccated versus dry freeze. Yes, I did research that because I wanted to make sure that I give the best of my kids. And desiccated has shown to be a lot more oxidized. The vitamins have been shown to be reduced by that heat because the heat is a very long heat. It takes about 40 hours for something like desiccation or even a normal dry freeze to happen. It takes about 40 hours for it to properly get to a place where the product is final. But there is other ways to do it with dry freeze that is done in plate freezers. They're done actually in New Zealand already, and that cuts the production time from 40 hours to 12 hours. So you're really conserving a lot of the desiccation minerals in some of the dry freeze oxidation. You're really blocking it from happening when you're really cutting down almost 60% of the cooking time by doing it from a plate freezing perspective, which is done in Australia right now, and New Zealand beef and organs. So that's the one I usually go towards too.
Wow. Yeah, I've noticed like the popular brands, they seem to be freeze dried, but I know some of the ones they carry in like the health food store, usually health food store supplements, I tell people just suck and they're not worth it. At least in the States. I don't know how it is up there, but most of those are probably desiccated. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. We have like 10% of what you guys have. So trust me, it's not the best quality we have here. Unfortunately. So yeah, we have to go for more medical grade or naturopathic grade or something a little bit more small, like Perfect Supplements. They do third-party testing on all of them, and I think that's super, super important. A bit like Shilajit, I know you do it for your Shilajit. You have the test right there on your website, which I really, really commend you for because a lot of people don't. And I feel like anyone that does desiccated liver should have their third-party test on their website just to show us that there's no heavy metal accumulation. I've heard, I believe, who was it on your podcast recently that was talking about copper levels not being even shown anymore in liver?
Well, Morley's mentioned that, and then I've been kind of repeating that to guests to get their thoughts,
right?
Because we just assume that the nutrients are in the whole foods, and that that's a really depressing thought to a lot of people and kind of a shocker, even with animal foods, because it's like, right. Okay, maybe plants aren't good, but the organ meats have to be good, right?
Right. Yeah, exactly. So I think these days, unfortunately, with supplementation, because they're not regulated, we also want to keep it a little bit this way, but at the same time, doing what's necessary by providing some third-party testing would probably bring you to a better level in terms of confidence by the customer. So I always try to look for that as well. I've messaged Rosita. I've messaged all my supplements. Like I know all the ingredients, the percentage in all of them because I think it's important to know. And from a food allergy perspective, I already do that for 90% of the foods my son eats. I call the companies to know. So it's just kind of another, hey, give me your third party testing. And
right.
My following on social media really appreciates it. I do that for collagen. I do that for protein powders, and I put them online. And most people, when they see something like that, they feel a little bit better, especially because they don't know it could be contaminated with especially heavy metals.
Yeah, I think I've told the story a few times in my podcast, but I think it was like 5 years ago when I was mainlining Shilajit powder. I went on I think it was Etsy website, one of those, and I bought like a kilo of Shilajit powder.
Okay.
And I was all excited because it was dirt cheap. And it was probably literally dirt mixed with feces because I felt like I started to get like flu-like symptoms within a couple weeks of consuming it every day.
Oh my God.
And that's the only thing I changed. I'm like, okay, the quality with Shilajit really matters.
Right. Yeah, I agree. 100%. It's super important, especially Shilajit.
I wanted to ask you about lactoferrin because you said with the milk and soaking liver in milk, it's kind of ironic, and lactoferrin chelates copper. Because I know lactoferrin also helps with iron overload, right? But I had not heard that it actually removes copper. That's interesting.
Yeah, it also is a chelator of copper as well, because copper and iron, they're again very, very similar and they work kind of synergistically together. Unfortunately, one comes with the other as well when it comes to lactoferrin. I did research a lot of lactoferrin because I do have a lot of kids that come to see me, and some of the supplementation that is made for adults, it unfortunately cannot be dosed for kids. So one of the best ones that I was able to find was lactoferrin based, which is colostrum. Colostrum, which is, the first food, we say, it's such a superfood, is very, very high in lactoferrin, almost the double of just normal breast milk or milk in general. So colostrum also has shown a lot of research to help with iron overload from a more gentle perspective, not the blood donations, not, adding copper sulfate to your kids' meals or anything like that. By just doing a quick supplementation protocol with colostrum around it, you're able to come down immensely in the IL-6 iron, which is the inflammatory pathogenic iron. There was actually a research that was really cool done in Italy, I believe, on pregnant women that were anemic. And they found that they gave them a supplementation of colostrum versus a supplementation of iron, of synthetic ferrous sulfate iron. And they found that both of them actually helped a little bit with serum levels of iron, but colostrum was the only one that was able to lower the IL-6, which is the marker for inflammation and pathogenic use of iron. The normal iron, the synthetic iron, just didn't budge that IL-6. So that actually shows you that supplementing with iron does not really, it helps potentially with anemia, but it does not help the most important part of it, which is lower the pathogenic kind of communication. Now we know that iron is used for bacterial and fungal communication as well, using EMF, sensory kind of sound waves, and EMF are used on kind of telephone poles between bacteria on iron. And I believe that's what happened to my son in terms of cradle cap. His cradle cap, which is obviously fungal based, was using the iron overload that was probably dumped from me into him to supercharge and rebuild and make more candida out of it. It's called quantum sensing. It's a brand new branch of science right now that uses it came out of necessity because medication does not do anymore the job that it's supposed to do. Antibiotic resistant fungal and bacterials have started to appear. So now they're trying to look at another way of killing these bacterial infections or fungus infections, candida infections. And they've discovered that they speak between each other. They use communication called quantum sensing between each other. And that communication is made mainly on literally the biofilm, which is the binding that they do together, and they kind of proliferate towards through biofilm, uses iron to proliferate. So I'm assuming that's what happened to my son in terms of cradle cap. He literally had the fungal in his body, which we all do have, that usually is dormant, had so much food in terms of communication, telephone post, which is iron in that case, that he just overloaded with it. So somebody like my son was not able because he was allergic to dairy, so I wasn't able to do colostrum for him. But most of the kids that come see me or clients that come see me, I highly recommend colostrum to cut the communication and cut that iron, cut the feeding of the bacteria.
Were you guys exposed to like electromagnetic fields? Because I've heard that like puts candida on overdrive. Did you look into that connection?
So that's the one. That's quantum sensing. Yeah, that's exactly what it is. It uses EMFs. Doris Lowe kind of opened my eyes to this about 2-3 years ago. She talks a lot about quantum sensing, ascorbic acid helping being an inhibitor of that. And quantum sensing is exactly that. It uses iron to proliferate by speaking to each other through EMF and using kind of the fiber optic is iron in a way between each other.
Wow, that's fascinating. Yeah,
That's fascinating.
Doris's work is it's kind of hard to understand. It's kind of like years ago when I used to listen to Jack Cruz and read his stuff.
Right. Right. Yeah, I'm still deciphering Doris Law. I have to take it small bits by small bits, have like a good hour to myself. But if you hear her on a podcast, she is the most eloquent class. She speaks so well. It's very easy for her to understand her more when she speaks than when I think she personally writes. So I would highly recommend a couple of podcasts from Dory Lowe, especially on redox, quantum sensing. She's really good on that stuff. And I've learned a lot from her. And now I'm applying a lot of these cutting candida infections, yeast infections, iron overload from some of these quantum sensing inhibitors that she put me in the path to find. And ironically enough, which is funny, but I don't know if Ray Pete knows this. I wonder, I would love to ask him, but carrots are actually inhibitor of quantum sensing. So it blocks the EMF communication between bacteria. So I know he uses it from a fiber perspective, destroying the endotoxins in the small intestine, but it actually also is an inhibitor of quantum sensing. So it blocks the bacterial communication.
Wow, that's fascinating.
Yeah.
I'm gonna have to grow a lot of carrots up here.
Chamomile is one of them, vanilla, garlic, and then ascorbic acid.
Yeah, that's the triggering one right there.
Yeah. Depends where you are in the world, right?
Right. Yeah, I like the situational context application of supplements. Like you mentioned copper sulfate a few minutes ago, and I've kind of backed off high dosing it because it was fun to take a ton of it, and I think it's situational. Like maybe if I was, I don't know, under a lot of stress and traveling, maybe that's a time to use it. And I think it's cheap. It's one of those things that you can make yourself at home, for pennies. That I think if someone's minimum wage, they can't afford anything, I think it's a good start.
Right. I haven't dosed with it yet. I'm gonna be very honest. I'm still looking into it. Again, I'm such an ancestral nutritional kind of pro that to me, like doing such a big intake of a vitamin doesn't really go in tune with what I'm preaching right now. And also I don't believe I really truly need to be dosing with 75 milligrams of copper a day. If you're 10 or I don't know. But I'm not there yet, honestly. I'm more working towards, having a strong foundational base when it comes to, even redox or, making sure that some of this halogens and heavy metals are taken care of before I'm adding more vitamins. Because if your vitamin intake is high, but again, you have these blocks of synthesizing, like we're seeing with vitamin D, we're seeing with iron, we're seeing with iodine deficiencies from chlorine. If you're having a high intake of fluoride, then where are you really putting all this stuff? Do you really believe it's going to get into the active form? If you do and you see great results, then amazing. But I personally try to clean the house first before, adding the penthouse or whatever you want to call it, the making sure it's, upgraded. So that's why I try to work with people first. And then if they want to and kind of go and venture into that realm, I'm very, very happy to join them and let's discover together. But at the beginning, I'm just kind of keeping it more in the traditional way, cleaning the house, making sure, there's no blockage in the kidneys, no blockage in the liver, making sure your thyroid is strong and healthy. You have, all the filters to be blocking the halogens coming in. You understand where, some of the heavy metals are coming from and making sure that those are easily eliminated. And, if there's time for then, supplementing with my mega dosing of some of these things, and by all means. But yeah, most of my clients are not there yet, I would say, for sure.
Yeah, it's definitely extreme. I appreciate like Morley's conservative approach to, just small doses if you're going to take a copper supplement, like 2 milligrams, and for people that are sensitive, especially. And I think one of the best things is if you're growing food, like put copper sulfate on your seeds to ensure it's in the soil, right, and in the plants.
That's so smart. I didn't think about that. That is very smart. I've been doing gelatin from amino acids. I've been doing shit, but I haven't done copper sulfate. That's actually a really good idea. Very good idea.
Yeah. I'm really excited to put up that growing dome the next few months.
Looking forward to see that one. And
put some lodestones in there and see if I can grow some interesting food.
Have you ever thought of giving it to your goats? Like, not that you're gonna maybe eat the liver, but like putting in their water or anything like that?
Yeah, one of my friends on Facebook, he was saying with his goats, he used, I think, the copper sulfate powder with dolomite, and I think Pat Colby, that wrote the book Natural Goat Care, talked about that, and
Okay.
that dolomite combination with something else, but yeah, it you can OD on copper sulfate, especially the powder, and so I'm very careful to not kill my goats. Like I really
Yeah.
want to want to research it well first.
Of course. Yeah. I was just thinking, you're talking about the copper being so deficient in the liver or the organ. So now, it's making me wonder, how we can increase perhaps, um, because copper sulfate is also given to, it's an organic pesticide that is used mainly for winemaking in Europe as well. So it is something that has been around for a long period of time. Of course, those traditional ways to stay away from it, especially when you're ingesting grapes or wine. But I think it's actually it could be very beneficial. So it's been used, clearly it's been used in these past couple of decades to remineralize the soil.
Yeah, and I think they use it for cleaning ponds and lakes. Like I think I'm going to put it in my lake at some point. But it's a very weak solution. I think it's like 1 pound for a spray bottle, and you just like, or I don't know, so many ounces, and you just spray it on the surface.
Got it.
Um,
Good. Your fish
but
are like
supercharged.
oh yeah, yeah.
So you mentioned iodine. I just actually, funny enough, a couple hours ago received an iodine book, and I'm starting to delve into that.
Brownstein, or who is it?
He did the forward in this book.
Okay.
I can't remember who wrote it, but I have a bunch on the way, and I'd like to have a whole show on it because I used to dose the Lugol's topically. I think that I was doing that like 10 years ago. And then I
Right.
stopped, and then I started doing tons of oysters. And up here, it could be kind of hard to get oysters. And so I do desiccated. And then I just wonder if I'm getting enough iodine. And
Mhm.
it's interesting, when I dose it, I do feel a change in my energy. Um,
Yeah, I have recently started dosing with it too. I definitely do believe it is important. I know Ray Pete speaks a lot about it, that there's no deficiencies, it doesn't really exist. I don't know what Adam thinks about it. I think he also is very similar in mentality, if I believe so. But again, I'm wondering if they're taking in consideration all these new halogens that are placed in our waters, that do impact our iodine levels by a lot. So I'm starting to wonder if people really take into consideration the not only the deficiencies, but why are the deficiencies coming in, or if we do have excess, is it truly excess or is it mimicry? Is the chlorine mimicking iodine? Because I know it can replace the same properties of iodine inside our body. So I'm just trying to see, where are most people headed at, and how we can improve somebody's life by perhaps, yes, sometimes you need iodine sometimes, but I would never start with iodine first for people. I would make sure the precursors are well set, they have good sodium levels, good potassium levels before kind of making that second step into giving them a little bit of iodine here and there. I think the precursors are also very important.
hmm Yeah, absolutely. And I think the context too, like, I don't know how many other people were like me that snuck into hotel jacuzzis with my friends, once or twice a week, and used super steamy chlorinated jacuzzis, and then pools, and we had one of those above ground pools in my backyard growing up in my childhood home, and we had that little floating duck releasing the chlorine in the water,
Oh boy.
and I got exposed to chlorine for the first 2 decades of my life, and so I'd imagine my iodine needs are different from someone that was raised in the ocean or something.
Right, right. In naturopathy, the way that we can actually see is through the under the eyes. If your under the eyes are very purplish, you probably have a little bit too much fluorine or halogens inside your body. It's a way of indication for us that your intake of halogens are a little too much, and probably impacts your iodine levels.
Interesting. I'm gonna start looking at people now when I go to like Costco or something.
The face can tell you a lot. You can see iron overload in a face. You can see potassium levels in a face. The face mapping is a really interesting way of seeing if people have some deficiencies or excesses.
Yeah, that was one of my favorite things about Dr. Cass Ingram, he just recently passed, and I've had him on the show here a few times, and um, he had a book called The Body Shape Diet, which is my favorite book from him. He talked about people being, I think, like a adrenal type, a thyroid type, or a combination type, and all the different types basically had their different body. So I think the carrot was adrenal type, like a pear-shaped body was like a thyroid type.
Interesting.
And then he would use like the length of the fingers. Like, since my index fingers, both of them are longer than my ring fingers, I'm a straight adrenal type according to him.
Okay. Yeah, me too. The body can give us a lot of information, like exactly like you said. Yeah, the pear-shaped type, I can totally see it, right? The thyroid, the excess estrogen, the tummy area has like 4 times more receptors in cortisol and estrogen than anywhere in the body. So the pear-shaped types 100% makes sense with thyroid. And again, when we see clients that come in with that little excess around the tummy or the hips, we know that there's a little bit of progress that can be made to support the thyroid function.
Mm-hmm. What do you use for potassium for clients? And I've been looking into the requirement, because a lot of people in the metabolic community will say that it's around 4 grams minimum a day. And that seems like a whole lot. And then some will even say it could potentially be more than that, maybe 10 grams a day, depending on stress, previous stress, current stress, stressors coming in, which raises our potassium needs. And of course, there's sodium and magnesium, but I feel like potassium often gets forgotten about. Like I did that for years, where there's just magnesium, but I probably wasn't retaining it, right? Because I didn't have, let alone boron and all these other things.
Right. Yeah. I usually do around 2 for women. I try to keep it a bit more conservative and try to work on, like you said, the precursors of potassium and the cofactors of potassium as well, like the sodium levels as well, to make sure that they're balanced well. But I do use about 2 grams apparently a day, 2 to 3 grams a day for most. I work a lot with women, so most women. But your increase does intake. Yeah, you need to take more, like almost 500 milligrams extra if you're breastfeeding or you're pregnant. So it can vary between 2 to 4.
Yeah, up here in North Idaho, where there's not much fruit except for a certain time of the year, and otherwise I'm relying on Mexico fruit, it's really hard to get potassium. Like, I was wondering how indigenous people did it up here, because we have, a short berry season, so you could always, store those, whatever. But maybe honey, I don't know.
Yeah, honey is a source as well. That is actually a good question, how ancestrally they were doing it. Very good question. I would have to look into that, because it's true, sometimes we forget that we're in a supplement world, and we're like, oh yeah, they just supplement with everything, right? But going back to ancestrally, we should be looking into that. Maybe a little bit of fish, perhaps.
Maybe the requirements were lower, right, back then.
Definitely the workload was higher, but I definitely believe the stress was lower, for sure. But also there's potassium bicarbonate water as well. Like, spring water has a lot of potassium in it, especially bicarbonate potassium. So, there is a little bit of there too. And a lot of these indigenous places, they did use a lot of dairy as well. Us in Romania, our cake came from lots and lots of dairy, lots of it. Especially aged cheeses and stuff like that in the winter. That's when the aged cheeses kind of are more prolific because you made them in the summer. You're able to have some in the winter, and we know that potassium comes a lot with aged cheeses. So in Romania was more towards that. We had a lot of that that fermentation process and that aging process of our cheeses eaten during the winter times.
That's great. Yeah, whenever I eat pasta, I make it like a delivery for cheese.
Yeah.
Just create a ton of cheese.
Yeah, same here. Yeah, with my son, it's a bit hard because he doesn't eat cheese. So unfortunately, I eat cheese when he's not around. Unfortunately, it's not the best ideal, but I definitely try to intake my cheese, my milk, my kefir. I was able to find raw milk in Canada, which is a bit hard thing to do. So I was able to get a good supply of that. I'm very happy, and hopefully my son will be able to be on it too soon.
That's awesome. Well, we have a ton of questions. I was telling you before we started recording. Do you want to jump into some of these?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay. Yeah, there's a ton. Let's see. Best way, what's the best way to get heavy metals out of the body?
Well, it really depends which one, but definitely working on opening your detox pathways, especially your kidneys, working on kidney health, making sure your potassium and sodium levels are right way, especially potassium levels, making sure you have plenty of water. And then it depends on every single heavy metal. There's a plant usually for it. Like we said, silica can be a very good chelator for what's it called? For aluminum. Peripherals actually from green tea also has shown chelating properties on heavy metals as well. We do have coriander is another one as well. So there is, you can easily find plants that can help with heavy metal chelators. I personally use TRS. I know it's a very controversial one. It's just because we didn't have much back in the day in Canada. So I did use a zeolite, a synthetic zeolite, to help my son for a very small amount of time, not a lot at all. I did it for 2 months, and that greatly helped us in terms of heavy metal detoxification. But now I would highly recommend maybe a natural zeolite, not a synthetic zeolite that can be easily found.
Mm. Yeah, my favorite use for the zeolite, especially the liquid, or I guess you could use the powder and just hydrate it, is in like your hiking bag for a first aid. Like if you ever get like a cut or a scrape, it's a great blood clotter.
Very, 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 yeah, 100%. I am a big fan of zeolite. I know there's a lot of backlash on it, but if used well, with guidance, you can really make some good stuff happen.
Mm-hmm. Someone asked about your thoughts on sauna for detoxing heavy metals. Are you a fan of just sauna therapy in general?
Yeah. I recently purchased a space sauna, so I was very fortunate about that. And with my son, especially, we really wanted to make sure that he has access to a sauna. Saunas are more though for heavy metals do help, but it's more for mold. I would say mold is more usually porous. It comes from the skin. Heavy metals as well, if you're opening well. So having a good binder, a zeolite, a little silica in your body prior to going to the sauna. But yes, 100% a sauna should help. We're supposed to be at all points, especially during the day, what's it called? Sweating, sorry. And that's something that we have completely lost an art of because we just don't move as much anymore, especially in the winter times when it is the most important, because again, that quantum sensing communication is used by heavy metals. So the fact that you're always in the way of kind of chelating those through sauna would be a great way to building immunity. So huge fan of sauna.
That's an interesting point about the mold. Maybe that's why I feel euphoric, because I just did a mold post about, with ozone therapy, and I was raised on a beach house for 20 years. And I'm pretty sure I had heavy mold exposure that I'm sure dealing with at some level.
It is one of the most underrated environmental toxins because you don't usually see it around your house, but a lot of people have a lot of mold symptoms, rashes, hives, and food intolerances as well. It can be some of the symptoms you find with mold. But again, because you don't see it, most people don't believe you. When you're like, you should look into mold, and they're like, no, it's okay. I'm like, okay, we have all the symptoms.
Right. So yeah, brain fog is a big one, right?
Huge neurologically. Heavy metals and mold really impact your neurological and cognitive performance.
What are your thoughts on coffee enemas? Someone asked.
Used well and with guidance, I think they're great. I think we have, how can I say this, a little bit casualized it personally. I don't think everyone should be doing a coffee enema, especially not using the right coffee. And these days, again, coffee is not what it used to be anymore, full of pesticides and heavy metals as well. So making sure that you're getting a proper coffee to use to get inside your liver is very, very important. But yes, in terms of severe dysbiosis, it is recommended to be done.
Yeah, I think it's a great first aid. I still get made fun of for my ozone rectal insufflation, whenever they say rectal,
Okay, yeah. No. You're in the 90s, like suppositories, most medication was going up there. So you didn't live through that. It's totally normal to be using that pathway.
Yeah, to me, that's kind of where I draw the line. Like, I think the whole biohacker space, which I keep my finger on the pulse of, they're like really heavily reliant on IV drips and suppositories. And I
Right.
think you don't really need either of those most of the time.
I agree. I agree 100%. I'm not sure mega dosing. I'm starting to see that, supplementation should be done in a very smart way and taking your time. Just like food, right? Supplementation should be mimicking the rhythm of food somewhere down the road. So having high doses, unless you're really severely in need of something like that, for most people, I agree with you that it should be spaced out and used in a more timely fashion. Not everything needs to be rushed,
Mm-hmm.
You don't need like 50,000 IUs or whatever. We can work our way in a better way synergistically with our body.
Yeah, I saw a Dave Asprey story on social media on Instagram the other day, and he had a Ziploc bag, and it looked like it was like 50 pills in the bag. It's like, wow, that's it's like every day or something.
Do you even need food at that point? Like at like at one point, you're like, it is pills. At one point, are you using? I do agree, and I promote supplementation. I think it's very important, especially these days with organs, whole foods, whatever it is that we need to make sure that you're in a better state. People don't have that time anymore to cook. People don't know how to cook anymore. People don't have access to good whole food. So supplementation is needed. But when you're starting to have bags of them to, live, you should be questioning some of your practices. And also, if you understand really the synergistic kind of compounds between minerals, like you're for sure creating some excess and deficiencies by having bags of vitamins.
There's probably some D3 in there somewhere too.
I don't know what he stands on that, but I wouldn't be surprised. Yeah.
Kind of on the same topic of coffee, someone asks about sensitivities or allergies to caffeine, like the reasons for that. Have you heard of that? Or
hormonally, probably you're just not able to withstand the high rate of cortisol coming inside of you, or perhaps the pesticide, because coffee crops are one of the highest grade pesticide crops in the world. So perhaps you're having an allergic reaction or an allergic intolerance to the pesticides from the coffee. The water should be filtered as well. There's definitely ways that you can perhaps try by having probably a little bit of milk in it to make sure the cortisol is not impacted very highly, or having an organic one with filtered water. People should try different ones, but I don't think an allergic reaction to coffee is something I've heard in my practice or in my research. It's more hormonal based or environmental, allergic to the toxin or the aggressor.
Mm. Let's see. How can you recover from severe oxalate intolerance? You looked at the oxalate topic, because I know a lot of the carnivores say they're poison, right? Like potatoes.
Right. Severe oxalate toxin. Again, like I said, the kidneys are often left behind. We focus on gut, we focus on liver, but most of the excretion of obviously urination goes through there. So if you're having issues with oxalates, I would highly recommend getting on an organotherapy, desiccated kidney, making sure your histamine levels are well managed, making sure your sodium and potassium levels are well placed as well. And then cooking your food probably should be another way. If you have issues with oxalation, just cook your food. Make sure that that oxalated state is broken down by heat. And most of the time, most people have less reactions to it as well.
That's great. This is a really broad one.
Oh yeah.
8-year-old son with ADHD. Said
Okay.
ODD. Maybe they mean like OCD. I don't know.
OCD and ADD.
It said like lead toxicity, maybe. What to do? Or have you heard of like a certain heavy metal or toxin being associated with like attention deficit? If that's a real diagnosis.
Right. It depends who you're asking, but there is definitely environmental aggressors into play. And I have done heavy metal tests, mineral tests for kids with ADD, and most of the time there's a heavy metal that comes out of them. What's interesting with kids with hair mineral tests is that most of the time they're all fast metabolizers, so you're able to see what kind of comes out of them because nothing is kind of hidden. They're able to kind of excrete whatever minerals or vitamins or heavy metals, they burn at a bigger rate. And I have seen mercury, aluminum, and lead on hair mineral tests for kids associated with ADHD. And it makes sense because aluminum and iron is used for the brain. It's that with manganese, the manganese iron kind of connection, and the fact that the aluminum mimics iron inside the brain, debalancing manganese and iron kind of metabolism has shown to be an issue with focus. So again, there is certain products out there for kids that have a focus tincture. So it's made with plants that promote focus. That also includes something like chlorella in it, or a silica, very gentle. A lot of new products are emerging right now that take this into consideration, especially heavy metals for kids. You can easily find them out there.
Mm-hmm. That's great. Let's see. Eye floaters. Is that related to heavy metal toxicity?
I would say so. I would definitely say so. Mercury is a big one. Cadmium is also something we've seen for eye. I know, vitamin A deficiencies mainly are also important for eye health as well. I know I think Adam using copper sulfate to put a couple of drops in his eyes to see if it works for him. I'm pretty sure he had some good outcome from that. But yes, we've seen it because of, again, those pregnant women that have their babies, and oddly enough, their vision gets better afterwards. Gives us an indication that there was something probably there that was blocking the vision pathways that now is removed, and the vision has been restored. So we do believe that heavy metals can get anywhere inside the head. The head is usually a big culprit of heavy metal toxicity.
Yeah, it's interesting you mentioned manganese before, because I know like tap water in a shower is a huge source of manganese that people don't think about. Like a lot of municipal water will be loaded full of manganese.
Right. Yeah, it is a very under discussed mineral, and it has a lot to do with just the breaking the balance, the gentle balance in manganese could potentially do a lot of different dysbiosis in the body. We've seen a lot of links to Lyme disease, especially, and also a cognitive decline if the balance between manganese is there. So yeah, it's a very gentle one that needs to be gently kind of approached.
Mm-hmm. Let's see. Thoughts on oral immunotherapy?
In terms of food allergies? Yeah, I'm doing it with my son. I'm using all the traits in the books. I am currently doing it with my son. It's been working extremely well for us, especially since he's so young. He's only 4 years old. His immune system hasn't built yet to a foundational ground where we can really modulate it anymore. So we've been using it. Yes, I've been giving him microdosing peanuts, microdosing almonds, microdosing sesame seeds. He's microdosing a lot of stuff every single day. And it has been helping. So I highly recommend, if you can find an allergist that can help with that and facilitate that service for you, to get on it.
It's great. Let's see. It's a lot of how to detox heavy metal questions. That's about a third of them.
Maybe I'll I'm joking.
We had one on ozone as a mouthwash, which I don't know how it relates, but
maybe you can answer that when I talk about ozone. I'm going to be very honest with you. I know it for cancer therapy. I know it for mold therapy, but for mouth therapy, in what sense? In the sense of pathogenic and parasites inside the mouth?
I guess, or just for dental. But yeah, I was curious anyway, since you've been talking about mold and fungus, if you had researched ozone therapy, because it seems to be pretty effective for those.
Yes, it's very effective. Very effective. I've seen many articles on it. I've seen many anecdotal successful stories about ozone therapy. Just using the ozone chamber, like it's like a sauna. It looks like a sauna. You kind of get inside, and you get a little mega dose of ozone. Has really helped. Like that, they put towels underneath them, and you see the mold coming out. Like you see black around the towel. If you're able to find an ozone or have a product that can facilitate you to intake ozone, it's a great one.
Hmm. Any thoughts on barium? Someone asked about that.
Barium. Yes, barium is also pretty prolific in our environment as well. It doesn't have much cognitive issues. It's more towards the kidneys and the liver. So it can impact your cholesterol levels. It can impact your high blood pressure levels as well. But yes, it is important to also keep at bay.
Let's see. Are mail order food allergy test kits accurate?
No, they're not. No, they're not. The skin test, even the ones that you do at your allergist, has about 50 to 60% false positive results. So you have to be careful with those because you don't want to limit your diet from something that has such a false positive results. Usually orally is the best way to understand the symptoms. If you start having any gut issues, histamine reactions to it, obviously anaphylactic reactions to it, would be the best way to do is to do it orally because the skin test are not accurate at all. And I'm even wondering if some of the allergies that my son still has, because we're doing skin tests, unfortunately, we haven't given him orally everything, are even accurate at this point. So it's not a tool that I would personally use for my clients.
Mm. What are your thoughts on collagen powder? Because I know that's blown up over the years, and they asked, bovine versus marine, and just your overall thoughts on taking collagen.
So I have a new kind of thought about it because collagen, Doris Lowe actually speaks a lot about it to keep the redox in balance. She speaks a lot about vitamin C being one of them that you need to be, keeping in a balance. But actually collagen is, she calls it biofregency, if I'm not mistaken. Biofregency is, again, something that keeps that redox into balance, and collagen is one of them. So she's a huge promoter of it. And I do believe it could have its place. I do like it when it comes to the cofactors. Copper is a cofactor to it. Vitamin C, of course, is a cofactor to it. So if you can find a product that has also cofactors to the collagen powder, then it is in a better place. I use it for my clients also from a protein intake. A lot of women coming out of veganism or vegetarianism and need to take a little bit more protein. It doesn't have as much protein as protein powders, but it is something that this does provide about 9 to 10 grams of protein per scoop. So I do use it in my practice to kind of make sure that they do have a little bit of protein intake in the morning. They like the fact that also it helps aesthetically, so that also helps them. But I do use it. I try to obviously use whole foods, but in certain cases, especially when somebody comes from a non-animal based diet, it is an easier way to ease people into it.
Mm. I have a question for you. That since we mentioned it a few times, like ascorbic acid.
Yeah.
Have you experimented with, was it Doris that changed your mind on, the whole food C versus ascorbic acid? Because that's a very popular train of thought right now that, ascorbic acid is not vitamin C. But all the literature though shows ascorbic acid, and that's what Linus Pauling was talking about. So I'm just curious if you had any personal experience, like not getting results with whole food C and then trying ascorbic acid and getting better results, or.
Right. So I did use it. What I use right now is actually an ascorbic acid plus bioflavonoids. When you actually mix ascorbic acid from whole foods and ascorbic acid from, just a synthetic version of it is the same. Chemistry wise is the same. The only problem is that it doesn't come with the bioflavonoids, right? The tryptophan, the copper, I mean. But what we have found is that when you recompose bioflavonoids with ascorbic acid, you remake it into a supplement version. Ascorbic acid actually has 35% more increase in power. So it's very strange that the synthetic version of it actually has a better outcome than the whole food version of it. Okay. For me, because I am in Canada, I definitely make sure that I time my ascorbic acid intake because I don't believe I need ascorbic acid that much in the winter. Okay, the sun is not there to how can I say this? My epiderm is not burned by the sun like somebody in Costa Rica is or anything like that. So for me to protect myself from any kind of redox and balancement with ascorbic acid in the winter, it just doesn't make any sense for me. So I definitely reduce my fruit intake in the winter. From a carb perspective as well, we've seen that kind of it helps a little bit as well from ascorbic acid mainly. But in the summer, because I am outside most of the time, we do have a lot of a lot of EMF around me as well, especially since I'm living in an urban area. I have given it to my son as well, because EMFs have shown again to be proliferating bacterial communication and candida overload. So I do give it to my son to make sure that redox and also the bacteria is kind of kept at bay with ascorbic acid.
Mm. Yeah, it's interesting when you said synthetic version actually has a better outcome than the whole food version. I wonder how many things that applies to now, because of just how our world is, and it's a really interesting point.
Right. Most people don't want to admit it, and I don't want to admit it myself, as somebody that's so based in, we made our own foods for most of my life. We made our own fermented. We came from somewhere where the food was very, very much in need. But unfortunately, these days, it's just the whole food scene is just not what it used to be anymore. And also, we're kind of we're not taking our environment into account, I believe, that much. We're not eating. I know I'm not promoting to eat seasonally all the time, but there is, a circadian rhythm, and there is the sun and a time when most foods should be taken in a version or not. And then ascorbic acid is something that, I'm more prolific in when the sun is out and it is summertime. And in the winter, we kind of keep it more at bay and working on other things like potassium or quercetin-rich foods like onions and garlic, which is antifungal or anything like that. So it really depends on the supplementation. I definitely agree with you on that.
Mm-hmm. Let's see. Alpha lipoic acid for chelation. Have you ever looked into that?
I haven't, because I definitely want to use other things, more herbal things personally, but I do know that it's used in most supplementation, but it's not something that I've actually researched that much. I'm going to be very honest. I've been more researching the whole food versions of chelators.
Let's see. We just have, I think, a few more here, unless there's some that I missed here. Gadolinium, if you looked into that.
Lydium?
Gadolinium.
No, I haven't. I will though. I will come back. Whoever asked that question, I will come back. No, I haven't looked into that, unfortunately. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, this was a complicated. How to detox the gadolinium contrast from MRI.
Oh wow! No, unfortunately, I haven't looked into
that. Let's see. Based on our posts on sebum and PUFA, what causes influx of sebaceous cysts?
Just like acne, we have seen that increased intake in oleic acid, which comes from, unfortunately, polyunsaturated fats, just change the calcium levels on the epiderm. So yes, we have research that shows that an intake in polyunsaturated fats will make dysbiosis in the calcium levels in our epiderm, which will create acne, pimples, whiteheads, and unfortunately cysts as well. I definitely do agree that perhaps, a quick systematic enzyme probably protocol with, a little bit more of saturated fats behind it to remove some of this fibrosis. A little bit of ascorbic acid probably as well should be maybe recommended in terms of cysts, especially whatever cyst. I'm more towards going enzymes and making sure your topical creams have more saturated fats or monounsaturated fats to them to not kind of change this. We have really changed our sebum fat content throughout the decades, and I think has really impacted our vitamin D levels, has really impacted our calcium levels. Again, that filaggrin production for eczema has probably been impacted by sebum dysbiosis, switching from saturated fat in the 1950s to now probably a huge increase in polysaturated fat.
Yeah, it's interesting because there's a lot of like PUFA-free skincare products out there now.
Yeah.
And I've had some women tell me that their skin does better on PUFA products than it does on the more saturated fats. And I wonder why that is, like what variables are involved. It's really interesting.
Some of the polyunsaturated fat oils that are used in skincare also have a lot of antioxidants behind it. There's no questions about it. There is some seeds, especially raspberry seed oil. Anything that comes from fruit seed oil is often found in both antioxidant effects and polyunsaturated fat. So probably they see the short term results being, into an increase in antioxidants, but that polyunsaturated fat is still kind of lingering around, right? It has been absorbed by your epidermis, accumulating, right? Probably creating some oxidative stress, and you're not maybe connecting the dots that your melasma has, probably something to do with the polyunsaturated fat inside your sebum right now, or the fact that you are burning at a higher rate in the sun because of it. Aging also has been increased because we haven't taken our polysaturated fats. So it's a short-term result, and then there's a long-term result that I think people are kind of disconnecting between it.
This is a controversial one.
Uh-oh.
Detoxing from the V, the jab.
Right. It has a lot to do more with iron overload than we think. From what I gather, we see a lot of the ferritin markers after getting something like that, an MNRA technology application. We see your ferritin levels really, really increase. Some people think that that's why, there's some side effects with cardiovascular disease afterwards. Others have a lot more infections happening, or they feel chronically fatigued, or they have a lot more sickness after something like that. So I would highly recommend focusing on iron levels and making sure that those are back to where they're supposed to be. And you're probably going to be okay. Some colostrum. Get some colostrum in you.
That's great. Does alkaline water help?
No, I don't unfortunately believe so. No, I think, we have a pH that is on the acidic side of things, and alkalizing the body is probably putting it in dysbiosis if our natural state is on an acidic side of things. So I don't believe that an alkaline water filter is probably the best way to go. I would probably focus on remineralization, making sure it has all the, all the stuff that we don't want out, like the halogens out of it before, focusing on $5,000 machines that alkalize.
That's a good point. Yeah, years ago, I think it was 6 years ago or so, I learned about the different acid buffering systems in our body, and I think there's like 4 of them. But we have like the bicarbonate buffering system, the protein buffering system, and then 1 or 2 more that I can't remember. But people just rely on this like external source of like, ionized water to buffer acids. But it's like, what about your alkalizing minerals? What about your magnesium and your potassium, which is, it's nuts. I just learned today that citrate actually converts to bicarbonate, because I was anti-citrate for a while because supposedly it has an effect on copper, but it will actually convert to HCO3, bicarbonate ion, which is an incredible buffer for excess acid. So
oh, that's interesting. I didn't know about that. Okay, cool. Good to know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think our body uses bicarbonate just to neutralize stomach acid after we're done digesting our food. So it's an important piece.
Right. Exactly. I think that's why it's so right. Exactly. I'm not sure. For water, especially, as soon as it hits your probably acidic body, it's over. That pH has been changed. As soon as it hits your gut. So I'm not sure it's really something that I would probably focus more on fruit juices that probably have more alkalizing effects by having, some of those antioxidants in them or something like that. But no, not the water.
What water were you raised on in Romania? Was it like well or spring?
Well water. Yeah, water. Yeah, straight from the well. So a lot of calcification in my area. My grandmother had like literally stones coming out of her hand.
Wow.
Yeah, she thought it was silver and gold. That's what she was telling us as young teens, but it was clearly calcification stones from all those hard minerals.
It's so sad because if only those people had like a sediment and a carbon filter, like the solution is so easy and cheap and actually electricity free. That's what I'm going to do here, being fully off grid, like no pumps required. It's just in line, and they're very cheap media that removes the iron, the calcium, even some of the bacteria.
So. Yeah, for sure. Listen, they still live until 90, 100 years old, but they're a bit stonish. They couldn't move anymore, unfortunately. So it is what it is.
Yeah, maybe Shilajit would have.
Oh, yeah.
I think someone actually asked me about dandruff this morning. I saw, is dandruff caused by food allergies or vitamin deficiency?
I have linked dandruff to low thyroid function personally, because the fact that your blood circulation is very much needed by the very much assisted by the thyroid function. The fact that there's no oxygen going to the head, a little bit like we have symptoms of hypothyroidism linked to dry skin in the face. Well, the same thing kind of happens also for the head. The dry skinness that comes with hypothyroidism or any kind of thyroid dysbiosis is also linked to dandruff as well. So if you have chronic of it, it probably has to do with your hormonal imbalance. When I would look into supporting your thyroid function, bringing some of those fat soluble vitamins back in, your A, your K, your E.
That's great. Yeah, I think somewhere in the house I still have that metal head massager. Have you ever seen that? That supposedly is good. The scalp massager.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. I've researched a little bit about, hair loss. And anyways, that post was very controversial on Twitter. A lot of men are very sensitive about that topic, I've realized, by making a post about hair loss in general. But blood flow in general is very important for the head, and also the right fat. The fact that polysaturated fats does accumulate also on the head do exacerbate, again, eczema, acne as well. But acne there is more like a cystic oil coming out of your head probably as well. More, an oily head probably has more polysaturated fats that is needed for head sebum.
Interesting. Yeah, and I wonder how much fibrosis plays a role, because the more irritation and inflammation you have, and I know heavy metals go largely up to the head and the brain, like that's probably causing a lot of scar tissue.
Oh, yeah, that's a good question. That's actually a very good point. I didn't research that part. I was researching more like lipofuscin is very, very much prominent in men that are balding. So I was kind of going towards that and trying to see if, heavy metals, oxidation, polyunsaturated fats. But that is actually a really good one too. Good direction there.
What are your thoughts on homeopathy and bioresonance for heavy metals and histamines issues?
I have used bioresonance. Actually, my mentor naturopath uses bioresonance to find dysbiosis, and that's how we found the heavy metals for my son. So I've had really good, even anecdotal, but also my personal success story for bioresonance has been a really good one. We were able to find also in another family member Lyme disease as well. So there is something to it, the electricity, we all have energy. And now that I'm really researching quantum sensing and the fact that, we are, 10 microbiomes for one cell, we're more bacteria than we think, and they are talking, and we do have, EMFs that come into play from a communication perspective into them. So 100% we are energetic, and bioresonance, to my knowledge, is a good tool. Yeah. Homeopathy as well, but homeopathy has a lot of psychological behind it. You need to spend a good 3-4 hours with a homeopath, go through some emotional traumas, go through whatever happened in your life, and then they're able to kind of make a dosage for you based on what has happened. But in a very, very deep way, I think homeopathy can help regulate some of the dysbiosis and bring back some vitality, especially if you have emotional trauma. I would highly recommend going that route.
Yeah, guests on my show, I'm trying to remember, I think it was Ashley. She was saying histaminase helped her a lot with her and her clients for allergies.
Right. It helps, but at the end of the day, to me personally, it's a Band-Aid. It just helps for that amount of time, but it will eventually come back, I find. It just kind of gives us an indication if that reaction is a histamine-based reaction or it's something more pathogenic or infectious. But yes, we use it as well. I use it as well to kind of just making sure that, the client understands that this is more a histamine issue. But to me, it's more of a Band-Aid kind of approach while we're working on why is this happening.
Makes sense. Another question for me, have you donated blood or have thoughts on that? Because some people think every 2 months is overboard. It's kind of funny.
Well, because we have our periods where we menstruate, I try to do it once a year only. I do tend to be, since I've been having more liver and more organs, I stopped obviously because I wasn't in Romania anymore, but now I'm having way more again. I'm having daily. I've been better. So I will probably donate probably twice a year on top of, whatever I'm already kind of giving away monthly. But yes, I am 100% for it. It is an ancestral way. It's called bloodletting, right? That's what it was used back in the day for men, especially in the 1800s, 1600s. Bloodletting was very, very common, especially prominent in Europe, to remove disease and infection. They didn't know why, probably. They just saw that it helped a lot. So yes, I'm a huge promoter, especially if you have something like cancer or something like that. I would highly recommend, since iron overload is one of the biggest root causes of cancer, especially breast cancer.
Yeah, Morley he said, we either used to farm and get cut in the fields, or men would go to war and, get an arrow stuck in them or a gunshot wound and
right.
blood those ways.
Yeah, no, for sure. Men were a little bit more rough back in the day.
Yeah. And now they're on Xbox and
yeah. Right. We're yeah, exactly. We're rough in the metaverse and on the social media debate.
This is a question from my friend Jamie on the show. What are 3 things that she would tell someone when first starting out on their health journey?
3 things that you should tell someone to
that
start
you would
out.
tell someone, like, if they're just like, what are 3 things I could do to get started to be healthier?
Okay. Clean water, 100% focus on clean water. Even if you eat, your diet is still going to take time. Your water can be changed in the span of 48 hours. Okay. You can get a shower filter up. You can get a bath filter up. You can get a good water filter. So I would highly recommend looking into that. Obviously, I'll give why, and water is an important aspect of it. And then looking into not just why the food you're intaking is helping, but the absorbability of it. Okay. I see a lot of people, especially being confused these days, that is something like quinoa or, something like flax that have a huge, when you look at the nutritional value of things, we do see it as a big, amount of nutrients and micronutrients on it. But is that absorbable? I think if people would focus more on absorbability and bioavailability of foods, we would have a better streamline of nutrition in general. Okay. Rocks and dirt also are full of nutrients and vitamins, but you don't see us kind of eating them. And I think that should be also applied. I know it's very dramatic, but that should be very much applied in every single aspect of the food. Is that food, even if it has a lot of nutrients, is that going inside of you? Is it getting absorbed inside of you? I think that would be a really big one as well, that I would probably try to educate people on. And then the third one would probably be environmental toxins, because I had such a personal affair with them, especially heavy metals. Making sure that you understand that your food is not processed the same way, your water now is not processed the same way, and that potentially there is other factors than just low nutrients or stress that can exacerbate oxidation and more stress on your bodies that can come from different aspects in your life. So I would probably focus on that: water, food, and making sure that your surroundings, you understand some of the aggressors that could potentially come into your life, especially your children's life, most importantly.
That's a great list. Yeah, you reminded me of my raw vegan days when I was putting hemp seed powder in my smoothies and just throwing everything in that, and I would just feel like bloated, and it was just sitting there.
The amount of clients per week that I remove from hemp protein powders is astonishing. Sometimes that's all they need. I promise you. Sometimes just switching the protein powder or switching one of those salads, that meal, for a warmer meal or an animal-based protein does loads of benefits. So I understand where you're coming from.
Or putting meat in their salad, right? Or even just like soft-boiled eggs or hard-boiled eggs in their salad.
There's so many conflicted. Medical medium is telling you not to eat eggs, and then somebody else is telling you not to eat organs because they don't have any nutritional value. It's very hard. But again, if you focus again on mineral absorption, who cares what the minerals are? Are they getting inside your body? That should be, on an ingredient list. Next to the nutritional values, what is the absorption rate right next to it? I think, we would really educate more people on real food, on what's available to us and bioidentical to us.
That's great. Yeah, Medical Medium's really fun to watch because he really got people afraid of like Epstein-Barr and
right.
All these. He said eggs feed viruses, and it's just like this very hyper focused in on those. And I'm like, why don't you just mineral balance and get like a Rife frequency machine if you're worried about stuff like.
Well, yeah, I actually researched the egg situation with clinical medium, and it's an interesting one because he says, egg whites are feeding, especially protein. He said the protein of eggs are feeding, so I'm assuming the egg whites. It is true. The number one allergy in the world right now is egg whites. Egg in general it's not nuts anymore. The food allergy that is more prolific is eggs. So he has something to it, and it usually comes from medication. I'm going to be very honest with you. Yes, something like, the V uses egg whites. Most of them use egg whites inside of it, egg albumin to proliferate the virus. Is it clean at 100%? I'm not sure, but we've seen a lot of reactions to eggs since, a couple of decades ago. But then when he recommends something, he doesn't recommend looking at the protein, other protein in your body. He recommends a heavy metal detoxification. So, he's blaming the eggs, but then his protocol for Epstein-Barr virus is full of blueberries and coriander. So he understands that the iron overload or the heavy metals are actually present, but he never speaks about them. He just kind of puts them in the detox protocols and then blames an animal product for it. So I found that very funny from his part. Like, just say it's the heavy metals. We'll be in a better place, all of us.
So do you think if people just took like digestive enzymes with their eggs, they would be better off, just to increase the absorbability of them? Or
digestive enzymes and amino acids, like I said, that L-histine, that glutamine, that that arginine, they all help to make sure that your food is breaking down well. So having probably a combination of some amino acids, and which is an organ therapy, and also digestive enzymes, yes, 100% it should help you facilitate the digestion of any food, probably more than not. I would recommend for food allergies, especially anaphylactic, don't start doing that without any. Gotta add the fine print in there. But yes, I do believe that it could help. I'm a big believer in digestive enzymes in general. I'm a huge believer in them.
That's awesome. Yeah, the allergy thing is so multi-layered. Like, I know Jason's copper group. Like, people say if you have a sneeze attack, just take zinc. It's all zinc deficiency, or just take copper. Or take copper and zinc, but there's so many other factors. Like you said, the amino acids are never talked about, so it's cool.
They're never talked about, and they're super, super needed. They are the antagonist to histamine. So yeah, it's good that you're adding the copper, but if the antagonist to histamine, the precursor, almost a precursor, but in a very antagonistic way, is not there, and you're deficient in it, and research has shown that the deficiency in it is more prolific for you to have more heavy metals in, then it's just adding on top. It's another band-aid. Like, it's just another band-aid. If you're clean, then 100% take some histamine. But if you're not looking into heavy metals or any stressors, it could be phthalates, it could be BPA. If you're not looking into those and also addressing both of them at the same time, I'm not sure that copper is, maybe it's accumulating. I'm not sure. Is it accumulating, and perhaps later on down the road you're going to have some dysbiosis? Maybe.
Yeah, it's definitely. I don't think anyone in the group's gone over like 100 milligrams a day.
Wow, that's impressive. I think full tans though. I am in the group as well.
Right.
It's like golden orange.
Right. Yeah. Well, the first time I think I did 15 dropperfuls in my hand during mid-interview, and I got really nauseous, but then it passed and I felt great, but I went overboard on it for sure. So.
Yeah, like I said, I think the micro dosing is something that we forgot in the supplementation world. Yes, we are all for supplements. Personally, I am for one, but in a more gentle way than going in overboard. It would be just my approach, just because it seems like the body, that's the way that naturally we are. If we're supposed to take everything from food, then everything should be in a slower rate. So that's just the way that I kind of do things.
Yeah, it's a good approach. Well, Andra, this was awesome. I learned a lot, and
thank you.
Love what you're doing, and appreciate all the work.
It was a pleasure, honestly. It was very nice.
Awesome. And your website is wellnessbyandra.com, right?
That's it. That's right. Exactly.
Awesome. And you offer consultations, or you have a monthly membership? What do they get for that?
It's usually a monthly membership for somebody that needs a little bit more of a hand-to-hand support system. So if you are looking to, to have somebody kind of on a 24-hour span where you need a little bit of, holding hands in terms of text messages or emails, you want to run some products by me, I can even come to your house and kind of work with you to make sure that, everything looks good for your terrain, your bio-individualism, then that's something that some of my clients do need, especially when we work with a little bit more of a complicated situations like MS or Lyme disease. Usually it's a better way of getting a follow-up for a smaller rate. But if not, I also offer one-on-one consultations on its own. And yeah, it's been really great. I've been very humbled and grateful to be able to do this in my life. So I'm really looking forward to grow in this space.
Yeah, you've connected a lot of dots, and I always appreciate people that don't just parrot information, but actually look at it critically and share new information that I'm not seeing other people highlight. It's just really refreshing.
Thank you. I spend a lot of time. I usually spend on doing something like that. I think we all heard about the normal approaches, but again, bringing some new approaches might bring some questions. I don't have the answers to everything, but I will be there with questions, and hopefully it will start a conversation, and we can all learn from it.
Awesome. Well, thanks, Andra. Stick around as we close out the show.
Thank you so much.
That wraps up today's show. Because almost every show that I record, I always learn something from the guest. And in this one, I found the histidine amino acid that Andra talked about fascinating, because I grew up with pretty severe dust allergies, and my entire childhood, pretty much, I had sneeze attacks. And connecting the dots with what I ate growing up, it was mostly a vegetarian diet. I didn't like meat that much. So I was probably deficient in the amino acid histidine pretty severely, because that's mostly found in animal foods. So the last few months researching zinc for allergies has been really interesting. And you always hear that DAO enzyme, diamine oxidase, being copper dependent, but there's also zinc in there. There's vitamin C, and this histidine is a whole nother piece that I didn't consider. I think a lot of people are dealing with sneezing and allergies, and it's never just one thing. It's always a multitude of things, and finding the weakest link in that list, I think, is really important. And maybe someone's deficient in all four: histidine, vitamin C, zinc, and copper. I think that's highly possible, especially someone with really severe chronic allergies. But if it just comes and goes, then maybe it's just a few things. So that's where experimentation comes in. And I think all of those things are very safe to take, especially short term. You can't create imbalances short term taking zinc or copper or vitamin C. So since this interview with Andra, I've been experimenting with taking isolated histidine amino acid, and it works. I actually haven't sneezed since I've started taking it once. So amino acid therapy is really powerful, and I wonder how much of a role that plays in that organotherapy that Andra practices with the organ meats. Because I know there's vitamins and minerals in there, and it all works together, but I would imagine the amino acids in there play a huge role, because those are way different from the amino acids that you find in just muscle meat. So I hope you guys were able to connect some dots from that episode. I know I did. It was really fun, and I made a lot of notes and meditating on these different ideas that we talked about. If you want to check out her work, you can go to wellnessbyandra.com. And as she mentioned, she has a one-on-one. You can do a consultation with her or a monthly membership. She has blogs up there, and just great information that she's sharing, especially if you're dealing with allergies or suspect that you have heavy metal, especially aluminum toxicity. And if you want to support me in the show, you can go to matt-blackburn.com. I have my CLF protocol under the blogs tab, recipes for the gummies. I've been getting back into those. I go through phases of being lazy and then making them again. And that recipe's up there. There's pancakes. And if you go to shop, that's all of my recommended products. And next week's show is actually with the people at Analemma with the water wand that makes the water coherent. And it sounds super crazy and pseudoscience-y, but I actually taste the difference when I swirl this little quartz wand in my water container. That was a really fun show, and I was blown away with the information that they shared there. So if you've been waiting to pull the trigger on trying out that Analemma water wand, wait till you hear next week's episode, and I think you'll be convinced to try it. Those guys definitely know what they're talking about. And my brand is called Mitolife. You can find that at mitolife.co. And the Shilajit tablets just came back in stock. Really exciting things coming with Mitolife in the next 2 to 3 months. The oyster extract is finally going to be in stock, and 2 new products are coming out. The freeze-dried beef liver that's spiked with copper and elk antler velvet. And those supplements are so powerful, especially for ex-vegans or even ex-vegetarians, which I think a lot of people fit into that category. And I can't give too much away, but I will say the entire brand will be getting a upgrade or a facelift in the next 3 months. Basically, the quality of every product is going to go up. So that's really exciting, and stay tuned for details on that. So thank you so much for tuning into the podcast. There's a new episode released every Friday. I also have a private YouTube called the Mitolife Academy, and I release 2 exclusive videos every month. And then the last day of the month, I have a live Q&A that goes for at least 2 hours where you can ask me anything. So thanks for listening. See you guys next Friday, and stay supercharged.